This is the Average Guy Network, and you have found Home Gadget Geeks, show number 497, recorded on July 15th, 2021. Here on Home Gadget Geeks, we cover all the favorite tech gadgets that find their way into your home. News, reviews, product updates, and conversation, all for the average tech guy. I'm your host, Jim Collison, broadcasting live from the AverageGuy.tv studios here in a stormy and this was after the show last week, right? Friday night. Hurricane force winds, 90 mile an hour. No tornadoes. We're in the very northern tip of Tornado Alley. We're kind of used to these, pinpoint wind speeds in certain areas, but I think the whole metro got just blasted. 175,000 people without power. Did you suffer any power outage during the storm?
No power outage. No, it's funny. So my cul-de-sac it splits two grids in our neighborhood, and the people at the end of my circle always lose power, and us at the front end of the circle never lose power. So we blipped for a second, and it's funny. All of us smart home people know, when your power blips, because smart lights go into defaulting being on. So all the lights in my house just go great, which is perfect for when you have sleeping children. Let me tell you, just blast them with light and wake them up at whatever time in the morning. Yeah.
Midnight, yeah.
Yeah, we didn't have any electrical damage, but we did. My ham radio antenna is no longer on the roof, so I put up a new one of those without the mast this time. And I think everyone was wondering, I think Hannah was actually out there just shoving that thing off the roof, but blaming the storm. Her along with my neighbors.
In the middle of the storm, she's cutting
rocking
supports.
Yeah, I mean, I had a 30-foot, 20-foot pole stick out the top of my house, so... And then we lost, you guys know I lost my whole fence last fall. We lost a portion of the fence that belongs to my neighbor this time. So that went down. So the next morning, I put up a new temporary ham antenna, which is just a wire, which is great. And then helped my neighbor put back up the fence temporarily until he can get someone out to fix it. Yeah, just snapped the wood post. This isn't even like the composite fence. These are solid wood fence posts that just snapped, which is crazy.
90 mile an hour straight line winds. It was crazy. I went to bed. I'd had a long week and went to bed at 9:30, and I woke up at 6. Went to the bathroom, flicked on the light, and there was no light. And so you're kind of like, and then I hear Sarah go, "Power's out," and I'm like, "From what?" And she's like, "You didn't hear this." I'm like, "I didn't hear anything." And Mike slept through like.
You slept through the whole thing.
The whole thing didn't even
sound like a freight train.
Oh, I know. It was everybody was like, it was super intense. So, it was like 6 when I got up, and I didn't want to start running the generator. And we've talked about this on the show before. So I waited till 7, pulled the generator out, and I feel like I must have talked about this on Ask the Podcast Coach. That's why this feels like I've talked about it.
And we talked about it a little bit this weekend.
When you came over.
When I came over.
Yeah. So pulled the generator out and got the fridges plugged in. You feel the ice cream first. That's the indication. That's the canary.
It's a good call.
Right? It was a little soft. So we got the generator fired up, fridges plugged in, and then I ran, and I learned the last time this happened, have a bunch of power strips to go on the end. You can plug all those things in, because then you can plug in fans or power, to recharge your phone or whatever. Right. We're okay without a stove or even the microwave. I wasn't exactly sure if I was going to be able to power that microwave or not. I think that's a test. I think I probably could.
It's a lot of power,
but I got to look into that. We didn't need it. We can grill. So if we really needed it. So and then I got the Mac running. So like when I tried running the Windows, the big Windows box, the big Core i7, popped the breaker every time. Just like, no, not going to get that going. So that I have to troubleshoot that issue. That shouldn't be causing that much of a problem. That should run off that generator. It didn't for whatever reason. So I need to look into it. But the M1, the Mac Mini M1, it's basically a mobile processor. So like that fired right up. I fired the Surface Pro up. I have a little Atom box, fired that up, put those all on the generator. I wasn't even 25% at that point. So I had most things, the important things. Let's just be that way. The important things. I told Sammy, hey, you can fire up your laptop if you want. She was like, I was actually looking forward to a day of no power and reading. she sat out in the living room by the light of the sun and read a book. And I was, oh, how 1850, type thing, which was great. When I went out to check on the generator, my neighbor was out there and I said, hey, you got an extension cord? Can I plug in your fridge? And he was like, oh, that'd be great. So he brings the extension cord out. About half an hour later, I'm on the other side of the yard checking things, and my other neighbor is out there. I said, hey, you got a long extension cord? I can get your fridge and deep freezer. He has a deep freezer. He's like, yeah. So he brings those over. We plug him in, and still not even, I'm barely at 25% on the generator, which is super great. So we kept the neighbors' refrigerators going. We kept power, at least to the houses in here. They could charge their batteries, their phone batteries or whatever they needed to do. I got some very nice compliments from them. A little Panera gift card today for providing power, and just be a good neighbor, right?
Yeah.
So the generator, it's already paid for itself. Mike, the last time we lost power, I lost my mind. Like I couldn't, with no power, I couldn't do anything. This time, when the power came back on, I was like, oh, like, oh darn, like, okay, now you got to put.
I was really having fun with that.
I know, it was kind of cool. I was providing my own power. So I can't say enough about having some kind of backup source of power. We're out here in the Midwest in Nebraska. We lose power at least once a year in some form or fashion because of the weather. So,
and is this the first time you've had to rely on the generator?
Yes. Yeah.
You got it after the last storm, right?
Yeah, I bought it.
It was last fall. That when I lost my fence was when you were out of power, I think, for a couple of days, weren't you?
And that one I still didn't have fall fence. No, that one I still didn't have the generator. I didn't buy it. It was your fence before or after the lockdown? Because I bought it during the lockdown. So I did have it.
Yeah, mine was during.
Yeah, okay. No, I did have it. I don't think we lost power that storm. But so having it though, just fantastic. Like it just totally changed. If you asked me what's the best thing I bought in the last 2 years, it'd be that freaking generator. Like, don't get me wrong. I love my Legacy, my Subaru Legacy now, but the generator made it so easy. But it did cause me to think through a few things. Like I probably need to label the power cords on the ends so I know what they're going to. Because
that's smart.
I had to reconfigure a few things. I'd done a pretty good job, like all the networking equipment, the modem, the switch, which we're going to talk about with you here in a minute.
Yeah.
The modem, the switch, all those things, the HD home runs, they're all on one power strip. So I can literally just take that, and they actually all go into a single UPS. So I can just unplug that UPS, plug it in, the UPS recharges again. It had completely wiped out all my UPSs because the power went off and then I didn't wake up to shut them off. Right. So when I woke up, they were all completely dead. So getting those recharged. So I think I may go around and label the important, like it probably just makes sense to make sure I know what I want running during a power outage. And I have I'm not talking about necessarily writing down what's on them, but just having them labeled so I know which ones to grab to plug into the extension cords.
Yeah. Like during the outage, grab all orange labeled, cords and go.
Yeah. You
makes
total sense. I had a buddy make me some really long extension cords years ago, big, thick, like 8 gauge or 10 gauge, whatever it is, big, thick.
Yeah.
And they one plug on one side and then 4 outlets on the other. I have 3 of those. And so I can position those around the house. Now, you should be asking me, like, why haven't you just had your house wired so you can plug the generator into I just haven't done it yet.
It's expensive.
It is expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. So pretty successful, I think. Now I'm a big generator advocate. I mean, I was one before, but I really do think that's one of those things, like having UPS devices on your equipment for brownouts. If you live in a situation, I got this generator, March of the pandemic for $750, and it was a $1,500 generator. So that's maybe one of those things to add to your slick deals if you're thinking about, like, if that's you're losing power. Now it'll take a couple. I think it would actually take a couple power outages for that thing to make sense from losing meat and food and perishables, right? But man, the peace of mind that I had was pretty great.
Well, and there's a lot of other, camping, a lot of other use cases, for ham radio field day. I want a generator for that. For going out and running radios in the field, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, mine's on wheels, pretty big size, not something you'd carry around. You'd kind of probably, but Honda does make those kind of carrying versions. They're $1,000. They're pretty expensive, but they're small, generate quite a bit of power, very portable. So just one of those gadgets, kind of one of those home gadgets that like all of a sudden I have a whole new respect for. One of the things we lit candles early on, but those candles put out heat, and when your air conditioning's not working. So Sarah picked up off of Amazon 4 little LED lanterns. You just pull up, they have 3 triple or double A batteries on the bottom. You just pop them up. They stay lit forever. Like that's the beauty of LED lighting now, is it just doesn't ever really, it's kind of magic power, kind of magic light. So we picked up 4 of those for the next power outage. So pretty fun. It's crazy to think that. I almost lost my mind the last time we did this. And this time I'm saying, it was pretty fun. We had a good time. So,
well, we were talking about too, like the nerding out factor of, man, how far can I push this generator, and look how much I can power. And there's just like something about that that's rewarding a little bit.
That's right.
And fun and addicting, right?
That's right. When you were over, we talked about building a box that would come out of the 240. So it's got a 240 outlet. So we would take that into a box and build some smarts into the box that would monitor the power going out of those switches, and maybe some
individual turnoffs with each of the
something you can monitor it, like when you're away from the house. I wouldn't leave because I didn't want to necessarily leave the generator running with no one home,
right?
Type deal. I'd bought a lock, so I'd bolted it, or I locked it to my gas line so that nobody'd go rolling off with the thing. Although that's maybe not the best thing to lock it to, but that's what was there. Maybe I should put a post.
I'm gonna steal this and blow up this guy's house all in one fell swoop.
Yeah, he might be right. I should rethink that strategy.
How'd your house blow up? Well, a guy stole my generator.
Yeah, don't even start on that. Don't even start. The shoot, where was I going with that?
Building the box though to track everything, right?
Like a smart box.
Yeah.
Now that's going to seem kind of funny after what we're going to talk about tonight. That's going to seem a little funny in the post show about that. But when you were over picking up the beer, we talked about like, what if we built this kind of distribution box and had all this?
That'd be so much fun. That right there is like ham radio. That's what I love about it. Like building Go boxes for your ham radio and building the radios. Like that's what it keeps me in the hobby.
Joe is now in the chat room. Joe, in the pre-show, we opened your Love Honey.
Oh, yeah, it's delicious,
and it lost 40, and it's super good. We did a little pre-show beer pour there, so thanks for sending those. Joe sent those from Arkansas, so we appreciate that. Big thanks to Rich Hay, who joined me last week. We had a really good time with Rich, and Rich can go on for a while. And when he did his own podcast, he was really good and really fast. And so if you want to get a lot of information about Windows 11 on that and get caught up with Rich A, always a good time with Rich. He is a pro. And so if you haven't gone back and listened, if you want to kind of get caught up on what I think are the most important parts of Windows 11 for most people, go back and listen to last week's episode. Some good coverage on it. I want to thank Rich for coming on. We thank our Patreon subscribers as well. We haven't done that in a while, but if you're currently a Patreon subscriber, appreciate you and the work that you do to keep that going. And of course, that helps us do what we do here. So appreciate you guys doing that as well. And then Mike, quick, since it's just the two of us, quick crypto update. Crypto has been fairly flat. Flat to down. Right? How you feeling right now about crypto?
I like it. Well, I should clarify. I like Ethereum. I think Ethereum's a hot buy right now. Again, not financial advice, not legal advice, but Ethereum actually was under 2,000 today.
Yeah.
I think that's a good buy point.
Yeah. If you want to join, if you haven't done it yet, and a lot of you have, and appreciate you guys doing that, but if you head over to theaverageguy.tv/Coinbase, you can sign up for a Coinbase account. You deposit 100, you get 10, I get 10, and it's a pretty good deal for everybody all the way around. Just know what you're doing when you get there. Like we always just say, use Coinbase as an opportunity to get familiar and educated around crypto. We don't want anybody doing anything crazy with it. But if you want to join us in that, theaverageguy.tv/Coinbase to get that done. Did you need a second mic, or did you want to show something?
I needed 1 second.
Oh, okay. Well, nothing like just calling it out. So we have this awkward, moment. We've,
no, I was at dinner with a client essentially, and this is what happened. So I was at dinner with a client. I left a little bit early. He just texted me saying, "Hey, can I swing by? I left my computer in your car." So I'm trying to just real quick coordinate to my wife and go unlock the car.
Yeah. No sweat on that one. Had a good opportunity this week. Really, after having Rich on the show last week, had a really good opportunity this week to just kind of handle Windows 11 on my Surface Pro, and I'll be honest, it's kind of ready. There's a few things that aren't, but it's kind of just Windows 10 with some polish. So if you haven't tried it yet, I think it's ready to try. If you haven't, if after the show last week we didn't convince you to go out and join the Insider program, that's the way to get it. Put yourself on the dev channel and it'll automatically download for you. Maybe a great time to get out there and give it a try. Put it in a VM or put it on a box. Right now, there's no requirements. They're not saying what the box has to be. You can literally put it on anything. So give that a try and go out there, kind of get that done. Mike, 2 weeks ago, tried bringing you in. I had John Panazzo from Unraid, and dude, it was weird because I was like, dude, are you coming? And you're like, the link didn't work. And I'm like, yeah, didn't work. So I checked it, sent you another link. You disappeared for a while. And then I was like, dude, are you coming? And nothing. Yeah. And so fortunately, John had a lot to say. We did a short show that week, so that worked out as well. But give us last week we said we'd fill it. What went wrong?
Yeah, well, so it was a mixture of a lot of things. So the non-response from me was due to, first of all, no reception in my basement, 1 bar, and 2, just pure frustration, and I was in the middle of yelling at my computer system. So really, to really get started, I started to have issues, but I didn't recognize there were issues a few days earlier that week. My NVIDIA Shield in the living room all of a sudden was like, hey, I can't get an IP address. I'm like, well, that's weird. It's hardwired. So you guys know I have a central server rack. I have hardwire all throughout my house. And the NVIDIA Shield is one of the things that's plugged in. And so I was like, that's weird. Well, I didn't think anything of it. I'm like, okay, maybe the port went bad on the NVIDIA Shield. So I switched over to Wi-Fi and it worked fine, no problem. And I started to run into little issues like that, for a few days, but I just, not thinking too much of it. Just the internet. No, man, the internet's down right now. It's taking a little bit. It's not doing things, or having to reload a page a few times to get to work, right? It's not working. It's not working. Oh, hey, it works. It's not working. So, but all this came to a head. Not working from home anymore. I'm never using the internet. I don't sit in front of this computer unless I'm podcasting or on my ham radio. So I was already running late, got home, went to turn it on, and like I told Jim, the link wouldn't work. And then it would start to load, and then nothing. And I would try it on a different computer, and it would work over there. So I'm like, okay, so the internet's up, so it should work. I thought this was a computer, and nope, then it wouldn't work here. And then it wouldn't work there. And I was like, what is going on? I was going insane. I thought it was my router. So I'm rebooting my router, right? Rebooting that. I'm like, it's got to be the router. It's got to be that. I'm even unplugging the Ethernet from the back of the computer, thinking, okay, computer, something like that. Of course, after all of this, it's the very last thing I'm even thinking about checking is the main switch in the server rack was in the end actually what had been going bad. And so there were a lot of ports in there. And actually, after still diagnosing this, I think that it's actually a power supply issue in that thing, because if I turn that switch off, I can't turn it back on right away. I have to wait 5 minutes and plug it in. And sometimes even that's not enough. Maybe it's 10 minutes. I got to let it sit unplugged, but I plug it back in and sometimes it'll turn on, sometimes it won't. So I think I've got some sort of power thing, but a lot of the ports on there have started to not fully fail. And Jim, this is what was throwing me for a loop. They weren't fully failing. It was just failing 90% of the time. So it would give you hope and then it wouldn't. So I didn't think it was the Ethernet line, because I associate those with either on or off, working, not working. And this PC that I'm talking to you guys on right now only has Ethernet, no Wi-Fi. So the fact that it was like starting to load and then wouldn't, and some other websites would load and then this one wouldn't. But so I ended up having to switch all these ports around and finally found the ports that work, the ports that don't work. And I'm trying to label them on this thing. But if you guys remember, this was actually the $30 Cisco switch that I got off eBay that had a damaged faceplate. So it doesn't even have a faceplate on it. You couldn't even tell what brand this thing is if you were looking at it. So I think it's actually lived a pretty good life. But Jim, this is what got me like to the point where, because for me, right,
I was like a little bit about just give an overview of your network setup. Like, how do you have it set up with VLANs and all those? Just give us a little overview of that.
So my overview, and this is my network, I guess still as of today. But my network is essentially my pfSense router goes into that Cisco smart switch. And on that switch, I had dedicated certain like physical sections when you're looking at the switch. Left side is untagged because that is where my airports for my Unify access points, those plug in there, right? So those ports need to be untagged, but they also need PoE because those access points use PoE. So I have 2 of those, and then 1 coming in from the router. Middle section is my cameras. That's on a certain VLAN. So I have a certain VLAN just for security cameras. And the reason I do that is because I block all internet to everything on that network except for one device, which is my NVR. So one of the Windows boxes on there has internet access, but all the cheap Chinese cameras, all that, they can't phone home. They can only talk locally to that NVR and send the stuff, which valid use of a VLAN. Mm-hmm. And then I have another VLAN for my main network. And there's this long roundabout story why, I have to tag essentially even my main network, like untagged traffic actually has nowhere to go on my network because essentially with my Unify controller being on Unraid wasn't able to talk because of the way Cisco tags their devices, because of the way they do native VLANs on a Cisco router doesn't work nicely with Unify devices. So Cisco does it the right way, to be totally honest. But the way that works with Unify and Unify access points talking back to a controller, all of my traffic is tagged in one way or another. So this is the issue I ran into, Jim, was because I said, okay, well, let me just pull out. I still have my old 48 port dumb switch and put it in there. Now there was 2 issues with that. Number 1, it has no PoE. So my access points aren't going to work. And I have no injectors around here because I got the access points without injectors because I had a PoE switch. I didn't need them. So I would have had no Wi-Fi. I probably could have whipped out maybe an old school Wi-Fi router from somewhere. But the second challenge of that, I'm all VLAN and tagged up, right? So like I would have had to go in, probably save the config on pfSense, then start all over and just have a flat network. And there's nothing wrong with that. But Jim, when stuff's not working, you need to be on a show and you're starting to I need to be on it. Like it's so frustrating when everything is like all the steps I would have had to go to just to get back to normal. And so in the end, I ended up just being like, you know what, tomorrow I'm going to test all the ports, the ones that are working, see if I have enough working ports. I ended up having enough working ports to get through. So still to this day, I'm actually still on the side. I've been talking about moving away from it. But it's like, once you get it working again, you kind of forget about your bad days that you had with it.
Yeah. But it's a ticking time bomb, right?
It's for sure a ticking time bomb. So I've actually been, in the meantime, I've been trying to get a Unify switch on eBay for a decent price, but those things they hold their value for a long time. Because that's really what I want is a Unify switch. But they're just too expensive. So it's either go Unify or just go back to a flat network and get 2 PoE injectors, go back to a flat network, no VLANs. And I can still block internet access to individual cameras. It's just a lot easier to know that anything I plug into that network gets blocked by default. That was just the easy way to go about it. So I do like separating things out via VLANs.
Tony in the chat room says a bad power strip was the culprit of internet issues while I was having months ago sporadic outages. So remember, as you're trying to check out all these things, it could not even, it may not even be the device, right? It could just be a power strip. Brian says Cisco might have a heatsink coming. Look inside it, Mike. I'm not sure what he means by it. Might have a heat sink coming. So Brian, clarify that for me if you
maybe would. Sync heatsink issue or something like that. Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and so, but you're this is kind of the question. Oh, and then Joe says serve the home has great threads on switches too. Well, Mike, the kind of the question I have for you at this point you've kind of already gone this route with your home storage, which is it all worth it? Like you've got all, I mean, yes, it's awesome. But you're basically doing enterprise grade networking in your house.
Yeah.
And okay, so it was just one incident. Like it was one night, it was one podcast. It wasn't the end of the world. I don't get mad. It's not a thing. But it certainly does when you have these kinds of issues like this. It really causes you to start thinking about like, do I just burn this whole thing down? Like, why am I adding all this added complexity? I too, with my home automation, have some Philips Hue and a Philips Hue hub that I've replaced twice. That about every 2 months just gives up the ghost. Like it just stops. Makes my Bitdefender box swirl because it senses there's a problem on the network. So I get a little red swirl. So then I got to go back through and set everything up. And then it seems like the apps are changing. So by the time I go back, because I never use the apps, right? I put them into the Amazon or the Google Space or whatever. Right? So you go into, then the apps have changed because they've updated, like they're updating home automation apps all the time. So you're like, okay, now where was that? How did I have that? And then you got to think, where did I put that kind of thing? Right. I mean, at what point for you is this worth it? Right.
I already hit it.
Complexity you did. Yeah. Well, talk a little bit about what you did for your storage.
Yeah. Well, so, and you guys know, I think I brought this up maybe about a month ago, Jim, was, I was considering, is it worth it? And a lot of you guys in chat, some of you were with me, some of you against me on moving away from self-hosting a lot of the stuff. And I think, I can't remember who it was. Someone commented and really said like, yeah, that sounds super simple, Mike. I'm sure Hannah would be like, fine if something happened to you and she'd have to run everything. So it was extremely convenient that before this all had happened 2 weeks ago, that essentially for the past month, I have been gradually getting rid of self-hosted stuff. Now, not everything. I still do like to self-host some things, but the main thing for me was Nextcloud. So with file storage and for Nextcloud for me, we were also doing calendar and contacts. And so calendar, contacts, and all document storage for cloud purposes was self-hosted by me. And there had already been a few times, where the Unraid box needed to be taken down or internet was out and, I was away from home and I couldn't access my stuff, like very rarely, but that had happened before. And so I already knew kind of the risks. But that combined with kind of us getting to talking about, man, if I'm not here, or even if I am here, let's like living, I'm talking like living here, right? Like I'm still alive, but
still
I'm
on the planet.
Like I'm starting to travel a lot more, right? And those sort of things just come up. And then all of a sudden Hannah's relying on it. When it's just you, like if it's just me, I can deal with those issues all day. But when family starts to rely on it, that's where the issue came. So I ended up actually switching over to OneDrive for our documents. And a lot kind of went into that decision on kind of which was the best. Was it Dropbox? Was it OneDrive? Really what it came down to was price. Like we were already paying for Office 365 and for the family. And, you can add, my mother-in-law is actually, she was on it too. So like, hey, we have a few users here that need it. And so we're already paying for the family account with 1 terabyte each. I really do like the OneDrive app for me was the most convenient and similar to Nextcloud in terms of that camera button scanning documents, doing whiteboard photos. Like the OneDrive app is really good. The photo automatic backup of your photo camera roll, that was already baked in. And unlike Google, or at least maybe not as much as Google, they're not going to go through all my data as much. So OneDrive was what we settled on. And then for calendars and contacts, we just went back to Apple. So we all, we have iPhones. And so for calendar, that was fine. You can use iCloud.com if you're on a Windows machine to see the calendar and all sorts of stuff. So we went back to the family share because we are big shared family calendar people. That was our probably number one use of Nextcloud was the shared calendars. And then contacts, we just went back to Apple as well, which worked fine. So really taking down Nextcloud, because those issues I was having that Thursday night, Jim, carried into the morning a little bit, right? And Hannah was working that night on her stuff, and like that would have taken down Nextcloud. Like she would have no access to her files, and it caused a big issue. And then the hardest part about this, Jim, is the maintenance, because not only does it go down, then it gets out of sync. Then, like when you fire it back up, it doesn't know about certain files. You have to run the command line terminal code to get it to resync and scan all the files. So it's kind of a mess, especially if you have to restore from a previous image. Because a lot of times I would restore from an old version of the app data in Unraid. And I have this happen with Plex and everything as well. Then it thinks it's last week, and it doesn't know about additions, but your computer does. And again, it's all out of whack. So the maintenance of all of that was a big kind of deciding factor. And that was kind of just the tip of the iceberg of me starting to just literally pull the plug on almost all of my self-hosted services. It was very liberating. Like, I can't tell you, when I had moved everything over to OneDrive, and I did this kind of in a day, because on the Mac laptop I have access to both my account and Hannah's, which is great. So I can move her files, move my files, go back, log back into different Forth, and switch them over to OneDrive. And once I got everything switched over and I turned the Docker off for Nextcloud, I was like, oh, like that feels a lot better. Like, I just not having to worry about things. I was also able to turn off the Cloudberry to Backblaze to B2 storage backup of that, because and that sometimes fails, right? And that's always running into errors. So even the backup of your data, I didn't have to worry about Nextcloud anymore. There was just a lot that was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, kind of liberating, right? Yeah. I mean, it is one of those. Back to the chat room for a second. Brian gave us clarifications. Quite possibly, he's talking about the heat sink coming off. So getting too hot, that would be an indication of why it takes 5 or 10 minutes after you unplug it. The capacitors or whatever's in there cool down, and then you plug it back in, and it works for a while till it gets a certain temperature, usage. You think about that kind of equipment. You've unplugged it, everything goes down. You plug it back in, it works great for a while. You start plugging things back in, you run something through it. I never had any idea just how hot those processors inside routers get based on traffic. Like,
I didn't know that either.
Well, think about this. They're processing all that Wi-Fi traffic that's coming across.
Yeah, that's true.
And the more devices you add to it, the more processing they have to do. They're not unlimited, infinite processors, right? They've got to move traffic, right? It's not complicated, but the more you do, you think you leave those things on 24/7. They never cool off, right? You never turn them off. That's why they go so, like the cheap ones, that's why they die so fast. Joe says Aruba or Brocade, cheap options for 10 gig.
Oh, that's good to know.
Brian says get a Cisco SG250X-48P. Yeah, because that's not complicated. Small business model with everything you need.
Well, Brian, okay, so 2 questions, and this is actually a question I had for you guys. Is Cisco still in the old model where, number 1, you need a service plan with them, and number 2, I have to program everything through the CLI? Because like the CLI interface on all those is just like, I learned it enough to get that Cisco switch programmed and VLANs done and trunking and all that stuff. But I don't really want to do it again. That's why I want Unify, because I love the interface.
Joe says there are standalone NVRs that have built-in PoE switches isolated from your main network. So
yeah, that's a good idea too. I run it on a Windows machine because I'm still a Sighthound guy.
The point is, do you need that all? Do you need all of that? Like, you do. So I have an Unraid server, and I have a Drobo, and I have a Moro data box.
Yeah,
right in here. I've got 80 terabytes of storage on the Chia server. Like, yes, I need that. But when we think about the storage, so when the power went down, the Drobo came back and a drive had failed. And it was absolutely because of the power failure. Like, it just went down, stopped spinning. That's an old 2 terabyte drive. And so the thing is screaming when I bring it back. The Drobo's screaming at me like, hey, like, I need a drive.
Yeah.
Right? It's just dying on me. And it's all kinds of warnings are going off, and I'm getting all these messages. I did order 2 more 4 terabyte drives to put in there. So now I have 5 4 terabyte drives. It had been 3 4 terabyte drives and 2 2 terabyte drives. And I was like, okay, now is the time. They were $60 each to get those 4 terabyte drives, and they can all match. It's kind of restoring right now. But it was one of those things like, okay, what am I like if the power outage had taken out the Durabo, or if the power outage had taken out Unraid. And listen, I just goof around with Unraid. Like I have it, but I just goof around with it. But you still got to bring it up and you say, well, I'm just going to test with it. And then it's there. I might as well put some data on it. And then pretty soon you're putting data that you need on it. And then you're like, oh crap. And you got to relearn. I don't know about you, but I don't mess with the things enough. I have so much of it that I don't mess with it enough that every time it goes down, I've got to figure out like, all right, how do I fix this?
Yeah, exactly.
What did I do last time? Where's this thing at? And so it causes me, every time I go through this, I start thinking I should start burning some of this stuff down. Like just like you got me thinking like I need to move all of our in actually a good chunk of it's already on OneDrive. So that kind of helps, but I need to get all that stuff on OneDrive in a family situation. So I'm not having to monkey with it. Right.
Yeah.
Just simple is better, I think.
Yeah. And what I'm not saying, cause I imagine there's gonna be a lot of listeners who are like, what? Like Mike was like the self-hosting guy. I still love it. And I still think you should go through the exercise. And if you enjoy it and if it works for you, keep it up. It was just and if you have the time to devote to it, like it is awesome. And it is so much fun. I love the self-hosting community. I'll always be a proponent of it. But for where I'm at, I didn't have the time to maintain it, the stress of it. And there was just so much stuff that was like, oh gosh, like it was just causing inconvenient issues. So definitely play with it. Definitely still fire up Nextcloud containers, get them going. They're fun. They're awesome. But also I think the main point is here. I don't think all of us who are been traditionally self-host guys, like it's not shameful to pull the plug on that and say, I'm going to use the cloud. Like it's not, like you can definitely do that. You're not going to lose some badge of honor. You're still cool. You know how to do it. So don't be afraid to just say, you know what, I'm going to admit that it's probably more convenient and safer for me to be using the cloud right now. So Jim, the second thing I did after obviously OneDrive, and switch to OneDrive was, and this one I know I'm going to get flack for. I actually went away from Bitwarden, at least the self-hosted version of Bitwarden. So I had been self-hosting my password manager, and that, Jim, honestly scared me more than anything, only because I have become a 100% user of the generated passwords. I couldn't tell you a single password for any account I have online. Each of them has a unique generated password that I use the little, what's called plugin tool. The plugin
generates passwords for you.
Yeah. Generates passwords. Then it saves it. So I would have not known any of my passwords, and and all my secure notes and everything like that. And I'm like, that is one SSD failure away in my Unraid machine from all being gone. Like, and that happens all the time. Like SSDs fail all the time. So that was like, and I know there's backups and it backs up right. But also the main thing for me on that was not losing it forever. It was, okay, if my internet goes down or if my Unraid server's off and I'm away from the house, I have my passwords are all gone. Like I'm talking to every password. I have no idea what anything is. Good luck logging into
and you can
absolutely
get it back.
Anything.
Like you go through the process to get it back, but you're talking about hours or days of work. Like, to get all
and how many
back.
resets of the, yeah. And so, and that's even if I can get into my email. I don't even know my Gmail password. So I could be really stuck up a creek. If I couldn't log into my Gmail. So
in theory, you'd have access to it on your phone though, right? It'd probably be signed in on your phone.
Somewhere. Right. Yeah. I'm just saying, ideally that was what would freak me out.
You're thinking worst case scenario. And it always is worst case scenario. Like the worst case scenario is always the one that happens.
Well, and that's not detrimental because let's say like, all I gotta do is get home and it'll power on, but it's just inconvenient. Like I'm out, and what if I need to look at my bank? Like I need to transfer some money. Can't do that. Right? Like that'd be tough. So I actually went back to LastPass, which they were a sponsor of the show a long time ago. A lot of years. And so I went back to them. Their pricing model has changed, by the way. And they also have a really good family option. So that's what I went with. I think it's $4 a month, maybe $4.99 a month. for the family option. So I think you get up to 5 or 6 premium accounts under that. So, which is great because I had my mother-in-law also on my Bitwarden. So she was using Bitwarden, which was using my server. So next time we're at the farm, I got to switch her over and get her under our family account with LastPass. But yeah, so switch back over to LastPass mainly because LastPass is actually where I have my Authenticator. So I use the LastPass Authenticator instead of Google Authenticator. And especially because LastPass Authenticator actually backs up your codes to LastPass. So if you ever lose your phone, wipe your phone, and you don't restore from the backup, those are actually backed up through LastPass, which is fantastic.
It's a good.
So now it's all just one spot.
It's a good reminder. I have premium. I bought their premium plan. You know, they changed their log me in now. They're logged me in, and I got a good price on their premium. And I need to add Sarah to it. I just realized, you know, at one point it had, and by the way, going to the cloud for everything isn't necessarily the answer either, because, you know, now I was noticing Sarah the other day was logging into her LastPass. I used to have those connected, but when I dropped the plan, I disconnected her, so put her back on free. So now I need to go in with premium. I can do some backup options. I don't have family, but I got premium, so I got some things so I can share with her. What I really want her to be able to do is get into my passwords. I don't necessarily need her to be on my LastPass, but I do want her to be able to get to my passwords in the event something happens to me. I want to be able to get into my account. That, like my will, I haven't set up yet. And so I need to get in there, and it's another one of those nasty reminders of like, okay, now that all of our banking information, all the crypto that I have, not a clue. Like, she wouldn't know what to do. That reminds me, I probably need to sit down and come up with some instructions to say, okay, here's what we got. I probably should give those instructions to you, so that like somebody who knows what's going on.
Hannah and I were having the same conversation because you and Jim should just swap books. So when something happens, because you're the only ones nerdy enough to know what the other one's doing.
That's true. Yeah, the ladies would probably appreciate that, just to be safe. Totally honest. Joe says he's still using KeyPass, and that's for password management. It's basically an encrypted notebook that's local and available to you. We use KeyPass at Gallup. That's the one they recommend. So, and then Bust Out coming in from Twitch. So thanks for joining us from Twitch. Bust Out says Microsoft and I think Google Authenticator also backs up to the cloud, and they may now. I haven't looked at those in a while.
Okay.
To see if because that was always the early authenticators didn't.
Yeah.
And so you change phones, and then, boy, I tell you what, that's the only thing worse than a lost password is a lost authenticator. They're terrible to get back.
Well,
you can,
because that's the whole point, right? Right. You need the 2FA.
Right. Yeah.
And that's why for most people, I recommend, I know it's not as secure, but it's better than nothing. And it's better than the alternative. When people are asking like, hey, I need an authenticator. And I'm like, well, do you have an authenticator app? They're like, no. I'm like, just plug in your phone number and have it text you the code. Yeah. Like, that's the easiest, I think, for the average person. Yeah. It's still more secure than it would be without.
Not 2FA. As secure. It's an authenticator. No,
definitely not as secure. Right? Like, it's not Fort Knox, but it's better than not having 2FA and the risk of you deleting that app in the future or getting a new phone or whatever.
Joe thinks Google still does.
And I don't think it does, because I remember Google Authenticator. There's not even a spot to log in, at least on iPhone. It doesn't even have a login.
To be honest, I don't think it's been updated in about 10 years. It looks exactly the same. That may be one of those products that they developed, then that team left or did something different, and they've forgotten they have an authenticator app out there that people are using. It just hasn't really changed very much. I also am a LastPass authenticator user. I like it, backs it up. When you get a new phone, you just reinstall LastPass and the authenticator, and it's all there. I mean, it's pretty freaking easy. So that change, all those changes, Mike, you've taken some. Do you miss self-hosting some of those things?
Yeah, a little bit, to be honest. I do. Well, I miss it for like a second. And then I'm like, oh yeah, it's kind of nice, like not having the responsibility anymore. And I do love that the small little bugs just don't happen anymore. Right? There was always like things with Nextcloud. Nextcloud is a enterprise level app that you're trying to run as a single self-hoster. And there's just little things that, it's just like there's a lot of bugs that just need to be worked out in it by the person. Not bugs with the software, but things that come up that you need to change a setting for. Oh, you need to get in the CLI and make some, update some indices, things like that. So yeah, I do miss a little bit, but honestly, with Unraid, I still self-host enough to make it fun. So I still self-host the Valheim server, which, Bust Out, my brother-in-law still play on, self-host Plex, obviously, and keep that running. Self-host my Unify controller that is being connected to by I call them clients. They're friends and family who have set up their Wi-Fi networks that connect back to my Unify controller. Things like that, right? That makes sense to kind of self-host.
Unlimited data still, Mike, or did you bring it down?
I did. And okay, so this is interesting. This is a fun little fact. So all I wanted to do was eliminate my Cox bill was $162 a month. And that was $112 for gigabit internet and $50 for unlimited data. I mean, that's a lot for unlimited data. You're talking, 50% of your bill being tacked on the top. So I got on the chat and I was messaging this guy and he's like, who am I talking to? I'm like, this is Mike. Can I just remove this? Like, oh, sorry. Your account's under Hannah. Like, so we need her. And I'm like, what? I just want to remove like unlimited data. And like, sorry, it's Hannah. So then I type, okay, this is Hannah. Can you please approve this? And they're like, no, sorry. Since you started the chat as Michael, we can't. And this was after I had waited like 30 minutes in chat, which I thought was weird. So I was like, fine, you know what? I'm just going to go on the website. Long story short, Cox has switched their whole model around, and you can actually, even for existing customers, if you have run past your promotion period, you can go back and redo all the plans. Well, there was a new plan that didn't have unlimited with gigabit for $90 a month instead of $115.
Yep, that's what I'm on.
Yeah, so not only I was going to continue to pay my full price and just get rid of the 50, but since they pissed me off so much, I went to the website and found out I can get a $25 discount plus remove the unlimited data just by submitting a new order. And so I didn't even have to talk to customer service. I just said, this is the service I want. I want the gigabit for $92 with no unlimited data. And then my whole thing just switched over. So that was kind of cool. But I was like, yeah, you make me a jerk on, chat.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Which is crazy because I know I'm an authorized user on it because I've called them a million times and they just asked me like, oh yeah, we see your name's on here as an authorized user. It's her old account from when she had an apartment when we were in college that we've just kept for years. But yeah, so I got rid of unlimited internet mainly because, without self-hosting a lot of this stuff and trying to cut back and
I wonder if the same thing would work. Like, say you call them and threaten to cut it off. And sometimes they give you a deal. Like you're like, I'm switching. Sometimes they give you a deal and sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
So just let them actually turn it off for whatever, and then just go right back in and reorder it. Now you're saying you can do that without even interrupting the service, right?
You can. Yeah. So as long as you are outside of your so like I had the 2-year discount for gigabit when it first came out.
Right.
That 2 years is expired. I was then paying full price, and you can always go in after your 24 months are done and get a new deal. And it was literally click done. Not like I have to call them, not anything. It was that's what I want. So they've kind of redone a little bit of that. And they bumped up during COVID, they bumped up their data cap by 25%. So now you get 1.25 terabytes, right?
Yes.
Per month. Yep. So 1250 gigs should be good enough. My problem that I run into is video games. Game updates and everything. Those are like 80 gigs a pop. So those are sometimes hard to swallow, especially when my Windows machine EA access is, we were talking about this last week with Rich Hay, a little bit finicky sometimes. I had already downloaded FIFA. And then when I launched up EA access, it was like, you don't have FIFA. I'm like, yes, I do. Literally the file's right there. And the EA access doesn't say like locate file. Like I can't point it and say, no, it's right here. So it just says, I can't find it. And then when you install it, it puts it right back where the old one was, which is great. But I know that was another 80 gigs off my cap. I'm like, oh man.
Oh yeah.
Now
painful,
I'm like the old man watching the thermostat. Be like, don't touch the thermostat. We can't. That's money.
What are you downloading? Downloading?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. We've actually, since my son left, there has been a steady decline. I was able to I feel like I feel like I've been working us off meth. So like I came down a little bit, okay, got down to sub 2000, right? And then okay, we're down to I can get back to the plan, the 1800 plan, right? Now then I can get down to the 1200 plan, right? And I think last month we did 800. Yeah, just kind of weaning ourselves, it's like it was like a diet, right? And I think last month I did 800 gig, and so I'm like, okay, yeah, we're back in business, so I don't have to worry about it. But it doesn't take much to a few big files, a few games. Like it doesn't take much to push over that. So there's
Bust Out says he's playing on my Valheim server right now as we talk.
He's in there. It must be gaming and listening. I don't know how you pay attention to us in game. I don't hear anything.
Valheim is such like just a very laid back game.
So Mike, I haven't had the problems you've had, but I am a little frustrated with all my lighting. Like I mentioned, the Philips Hue's not working really, really well. Some of the other Wi-Fi bulbs I have are being finicky. And I kind of, I was talking with Ed Sullivan about this just the other day, and he's like, yeah, there's that hard part, that really hard moment when you walk over to the wall and flick the switch up and the light comes on, and you're like, no, I know, I've got all these routines. Light comes on, goes 50% during the time, and the sun goes down at the time. And when you're setting all that stuff up, you're like, man, this is freaking cool. And then it just takes it all to go down for one, I got home, I'm running Home Assistant on the Unraid. I haven't logged into that for a while. Then you're like, okay, how do we do this again? Where does this go? Should I just do this all on an Amazon device, or should I let Google control it? I was on Marv's show, Pod Nuts Pro, and he would ask me about home automation, and I fully think he was expecting me to have this really positive outlook on it. And I'm like, it's hard. Like, it's still not ready. I don't know if lighting is still ready for the average guy. Like, it's kind of a convoluted, complicated mess. It's expensive. It's gotten cheaper, but it's expensive. Switches are weird. Installing switches are weird. Like when you get a smart switch, that's a different beast. Like, it's got all these holes in it. And you're like, where do these wires go? And what are they doing? And you get the instructions. They don't make any sense. And, I was installing one in the garage, and of course the outlet box in the garages are in the garage. I just have one, are metal. And I as I was putting it in, I brushed, done, gone,
popped,
gone. Like, well, there went that switch, let the genie out of the lamp. So, the last thing I really, I've been thinking about going getting the garage door automated. And then I'm like, do I really want one more thing? Somehow so for forever, I have a ring doorbell on the front, and forever the battery's charged off the power that's coming in for the, for it. Right. There's a wire that comes in. It's worked forever. Not anymore. Like 5 weeks ago, it just stopped working. And the batteries, now I got to go out every 2 weeks and change that battery to make that thing work. Every 2 weeks on that. And you're like, okay, this isn't going to work. I'm going to have to track. Now I got to go down. I got to find where that wire goes to. So whatever, I'm assuming it goes to a transformer somewhere in the basement here that I got to find. I didn't set up that transformer initially, so I have no idea where it's at, right? And so you're like, seriously?
Yeah.
Like,
I'm burning it all down. Just
so that and literally with the front door, so I can watch my Amazon guy deliver a package, or I can watch Sarah get the mail. Like, you kind of start thinking like, really? Is this all really, like, it couldn't this, I think for the longest time, especially the gadgets in the home, lighting, garage door openers, door locks. We just installed them and they worked for dozens of years without any intervention.
Right.
And now it seems like we're having to revisit those devices every couple of years. I was talking to a guy, who was it? I was talking to a guy the other day, neighbor maybe, and I was complaining. We were complaining about the Echo devices, right? The Amazon devices. And I said, we swear ours are getting deaf because like they're missing things that we're saying, like they've gotten worse, not better. And you would think, okay, they'd be installing updates to them, and they, why would a device like that? I mean, we even took one apart to see if the microphone part of it
that's what I was just going to ask. Yeah,
had gotten like plugged up. It is in the kitchen, so it gotten plugged up with grease. And he said to me, this is the most profound thing I'd heard all year. He goes, "You don't think Amazon's doing what Apple did, where they purposely cripple their old devices?" Then I started thinking back, like, okay, it is all the old devices.
Is it?
It is. It's all the old ones. They can't hear. Now, okay, insert jokes, right? Haha, get in a hearing aid, all those kinds of things, But you got to kind of wonder, like, I mean, Apple did it, right? Apple crippled their phones so that, and that's been a documented, they admitted to it. What would keep good old Jeff from like, hey, let's get him to upgrade to those Show 10s.
Well, especially because when everything's done in the cloud, all the processing is done in the cloud, there's no reason we would need to upgrade for a long time.
Yeah.
There's no batteries. All the processing's done in the cloud. Like, what do I really need? Like, that thing could last forever and be fine. So yeah, I can see being right. Now, that being said, I have not had any issues. And we have all old devices. Yeah. I don't even have one right down here, but my the mini versions, what are those called? The dots? The dots.
Yes.
Are like the flat hockey puck style.
Yep.
Not even rounded, right?
Yep.
I have a bunch of those, and I have the cylinder that you and I got at the very beginning, like the very first one they released. That's the cylinder I have. And I haven't had any issues. Ours are actually pretty darn good. They haven't started giving us any issues yet.
Well, man, ours, and it could be proximity of where they're at, because they
hearing you.
Yeah, like
we do have issues of two hear us. That's true.
Yeah, sometimes I'll start a timer in the kitchen. The living room starts the timer, and you're like, seriously, you're on the other side of the wall. Can you not be smart enough, like, for proximity? They talk about how smart these things are.
They're not on proximity. We'll say something in the kitchen, and like the kid's bedroom down the hall is like responding. Yeah. I'm like, where? Like, how was that?
All right. Chat room's chiming in. Joe says wonkiness is why I've avoided smart lighting for the most part. I tried a couple of Shelly switches and they're great, but super complicated, yes, to wire up. True story. Super complicated on some of these. Bust Out says, I have a Google Nest, I have the Google Nest smoke alarms. I'm dreading having to replace them all when their 10 years is up. Now, Bust Out, if you get 10 years out of the device, you're doing pretty well, just to be honest. In some cases, Mike, we're replacing these things because they stopped servicing them after 3 years. Like we're getting maybe 3 to 5 years on some of these things. So,
well, that's what so what is the 10 years? Is that a thing from Google saying they're not going to support it after 10 years? Or does it not have a replaceable battery?
Service that goes with it or something along those lines. So Bust Out, you can jump in there on that one. Brian says I picked up some Wi-Fi model switches when my SmartThings hub was discontinued. Okay. There's a debacle right there.
They
right?
can just
smart things.
Yank things.
We're done. We're not doing this anything anymore. And you're like, but wait, like didn't Lutron or not? It wasn't Lutron. Who did? We had Dwayne on and he talked about it. What was the brand? They stopped carrying them and then they just shut it off.
Oh, Lowe's. The Lowe's brand.
Yeah. What did they use? So they'll get it in the chat room. But yeah, so I mean that's a real thing as well. Tony said pretty good luck with the sync or the C by GE direct connect bulbs on Google Home. Even his wife likes them. Well, you're pretty lucky there that
lighting's something that works okay for me. Only because to get it set up, maybe not. Thank you, Iris. Right, Lowe's.
Iris.
But the lights, we do all of our lights through A-Lady. I do have some automations in Home Assistant that are automatic. But our lighting tends to work.
All the same brand?
No. Like 10 different brands, I swear. I don't know. I just get always the cheap ones. Whatever's on sale on Amazon, I'm grabbing those. Whether they're Wi-Fi. Now that I have Zigbee or Z-Wave.
Yeah, but when they go,
Zigbee.
When they go, Mike, you got to figure out like which one was this?
Yeah.
Right? I mean, okay, then
or I just put a new bulb in.
Yeah, but I mean, you still like now that was part of a group that you put in.
Oh,
yeah. Right? Like
I just haven't had any go with bad yet. I still have the same Philips Hue ones that I got way back in the day. I mean, I remember I was back in my apartment before the house when you and I were podcasting together when I got those Philips Hues, and those have it. So I haven't had a smart bulb die on me yet. Okay. Those LEDs last forever.
They do. Alex says for the smoke detectors, I think they guarantee that they'll work for 10 years in general. You should charge them or you should change them every 10 years. And that's a pretty good rule anyways. Google hard-coded them not to work past the industry lifespan. I think, which is smart. Like, you should be replacing these anyways. Now, this goes into the topic of should the manufacturers be artificially crippling things based on the like this is a safety device. In theory, it makes sense to say yes every 10 years, but then from a consumer standpoint, well, what if I want that thing? What if I want to keep it for 11 years? Like, shouldn't that be my choice?
I think of that as more of a safety risk because I'm the type of person that thing dies and I'm just throwing it away.
Yeah.
And then I'm not going to replace that thing for probably a year until I remember. Like, oh yeah, I need to get a smoke detector and put it in there. Like, that's just the type of brain I'll just forget. So I'm like, you should just let it continue on until it truly dies. Because for me, what is it? It's going to shriek at me until I throw it away or take out the battery or something.
It will.
I don't know.
Yeah, on the battery side.
I'll probably just take out the battery. Yeah.
Until you smash it on the wall. It's really ugly, but I've gone to taking a black Sharpie and putting the date I purchased the thing right in visible view to be like, okay, I know it looks ugly. I know it does. But it reminds me every time, like, oh yeah, I installed that thing on this day, because those really they are safety devices. If they say 10 years, you should replace them every 10 years. That's the way it goes. The point I was trying to make is, do we really want the manufacturer dictating that to us and not giving us choice? Like, hey, 10 years and then we're crippling this thing.
Yeah.
That's not really, that's not consumer choice at that point. And I'm, it's just a debate. I'm not saying one way or the other, just kind of wondering if that's really what we want, is the manufacturers dictating that.
Well, it was a solid year. So I installed SimpliSafe. But my house came when I bought it with a security system, like already pre-installed when the home was built. And the smoke detectors that were part of the house were integrated into that old security system. Well, when we cut the cord on that old security system, literally cutting cords up in the attic, and I had installed SimpliSafe, I didn't even think about the fact that I had completely eliminated all the smoke detectors. So there was about a year and a half to 2 years where we didn't have a single working smoke detector. And I didn't even think about it. I'm like, oh yeah, those were powered and connected to the old security system.
So Bust Out says California banned the sale of smoke detectors with replaceable batteries. The batteries are rated for 10 years. They should be replaced every 10 years. And,
wow.
And yeah, there you go. Right.
California, look at you go.
Yeah. Not a lot of choice in California.
No, just
not a lot of consumer choice.
This is what the people are going to do.
Just move to Nebraska. No, just kidding. It's good. Listen, what are you saying? Are you saying they shouldn't move to Nebraska?
I know I'm saying they should.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah.
Because we like it out here.
We have freedom here.
It's the Wild West out here. Everybody's carrying guns, the open holsters, and we have gun battles in the street all the time. So
that's how Jim and I solve our duels.
We still
last week I had this full finger, and then this week.
That's how we solve. That's how we solve duels. Well, Mike, all this is causing me to really rethink my infrastructure. Do I really need? Now I say this, and then so let's just say I'm going to go, I don't really need the Unraid server. And then I think, well, it's really not that bad. And I got Home Assistant running on it, and I store some of the Chia plots that I use for crypto on it. It's doing its thing. Why just leave it running, until it doesn't? And then I'll get all pissed that I've got to figure out how to how to fix it.
Or
don't be reasonable with me now. Okay?
No, I'm not. What I'm going to say is, because you know me, Jim, all me switching was, when I switched to OneDrive, that was just a project. I had just gotten bored.
Yeah.
In 2 months, I'll be back on Nextcloud.
Yeah,
I just needed something to do, right? So just have fun with it, take it all down and put it back up together. Because like you and I have talked about that, the setting up of a new service and the setting up is like all the fun for you and me.
For sure.
And then it starts running great and we're like, well, that was kind of boring.
Yeah,
you know,
it's like crypto.
So now I'm bored. Yeah,
crypto is the same way for me. I set these things up, and then I go, then I get them all set up, and I mess with them, and then I'm like, well, this is boring.
Yeah,
half
the fun for me with running Nextcloud was hitting the check for updates button, see if there's a new version of Nextcloud out.
Yeah,
and then what's that going to break, and what I'm going to have to fix?
No, totally. Last question for you, Mike. So I've got an extra 2 terabyte hard drive, brand new one that I thought I'd pair with the Mac.
Okay.
To be the new, because I had been backing up Time Machine to the Drobo. That works out really, really well.
Yeah.
But then had these Drobo problems, and the Drobo is kind of slow. And I had
is Drobo direct connect or network?
Networked.
Okay.
Network for sure. It was efficient, worked that way. The Time Machine backup keeps as many. I didn't really spend a lot of time configuring my Time Machine backup.
You don't need to.
Okay.
There's not many things to configure.
Okay, good.
It just says click done.
Yeah, done. Set it to Drobo. Should I leave it? Should I put it back? Now I have extra space on the Drobo. I have 4 extra terabytes on the Drobo because I put these 2 new drives in there.
Yeah.
Or should I take one of those 2 terabyte drives and give it a dedicated, via USB, give it dedicated backup to a single drive? So NAS backed up drives, I'm not going to lose it because it goes down. Now it's a backup, so in theory, if you lose that and you've still got the computer, right? So I think that. What would be your preference if you had the choice between backing it up to a NAS? A chat room ask you the same thing. Give me some advice. Back it up to the NAS. Back it up to a single drive, 2 terabyte.
So my advice would be, because it's a desktop that is never moving, I would go direct attach with that 2 terabyte. Couple reasons. Obviously, a lot faster when you're talking about the time it takes to back up or to restore. If you had to restore over your network, let's say in the event you need to use your Time Machine, you would only have to use your Time Machine, number one, if you deleted a file you didn't want to, or your whole computer dies, and you can actually restore your whole computer from Time Machine, which is pretty nice. That plus the addition of the one thing Time Machine is terrible at, unless you install an additional piece of software, is scheduling. It just decides it's going to do its backups right in the middle of your podcast and not taking up your network bandwidth. Instead, just being on a USB direct connected device is going to be a lot better. I think you and I actually, when I was on my Mac, used to run into that problem where it would start backing up to my NAS for Time Machine right as we were doing, and all of a sudden my upload would be terrible and my video would be terrible. So, having run into that in the past, I ended up switching when I had this. It's right here, the iMac. I would direct connect to that, and it worked a lot better, a lot more reliable too. Works well.
Yeah, I could actually set multiple locations, to be honest, too. I could set one to that drive and set another backup. I thought I saw in there where you can set multiple locations.
Okay. I didn't know if you could do 2 for.
It's something to test with. And I think for now, just for test purposes, I'm just going to put it in a dock. I have a single hard drive dock that I'm just going to plug into it. It's just going to sit right next to it. Fire that thing up and let it go for a while and see how that kind of works. Okay, well, you talked me into it. That means I've got extra 2 terabyte drive hanging around that'll get redeployed into something else and become crypto of some kind over the next. Here's the deal, though. So when those drives went bad, I had the choice to either delete crypto files. I didn't really have to; it would have restored, or buy a new drive. I was like, "Oh, I'm buying a new drive." You buy these things to be redundant, and then you're like, "Okay, I've got extra drives." I mean, I have tons of drives around here. I did take. This is sad. When I went to pick up that, I bought that 2 terabyte drive online, and then it was ready in 15 minutes at Best Buy.
From Best Buy?
Yeah,
nice.
Crazy how fast that was.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, if I'm going over there, I should take some of my broken hard drives that I have a hard drive drawer where I write bad on the hard drives and then put them in there.
I do the same thing.
I had 9. I had 9.
Did you? Wow.
I had 9
I thought I was
drives
mad at like 3
that I've collected probably over the last 10 years. There's a 500 gig hard drive in there. So they've been there for a while. But I was kind of like, yeah, what am I keeping these for? Am I going to build a shed out of them? Or, so when I went in to pick up the new 2 terabyte drive, and I got it for like $60, so it wasn't too bad. When I got the new one, this is why it got me thinking, well, hey, I got a new Mac. Well, I could put that new drive on the new Mac, and 2 terabytes would be perfect. That thing's only a 500 gig drive to begin with, so that should be just perfect. So I took him in, and the guy just looked at me. I'm like, hey, can I turn in hard drives here? And he looked at the box, like, yeah, just set it over there. And they have like a recycle. They don't even ask. They have like a recycle section that they just
That's cool.
They take it for them. So it's yeah, it's a WD green, Tony. That's I picked up a WD green. That the one that failed was not a WD green. It was an old Seagate. It was an old Seagate 2 terabyte drive. So that's the one that failed. Mike, I put it in the drive to test it, and it was like, yeah, there's no saving this one.
No coming back from that.
Bust Out says, I spent some money I inherited on 4 8 terabytes. Oh, nice. 4 8 terabytes and 1 12 terabyte drive. The 8 terabyte drives are in my Synology. Almost bought a Synology for this. And the 12 is a family member Synology for offsite backup. Great way to do it.
Yep.
Great way. Although offsite backup falls into the same category of complexity. Does it stay working? Does it stay turned on? Do you have to check it every so often to make sure it's doing its job? It's another piece of complexity that, it's got me thinking, like, I have about almost 3 terabytes of podcasting files that 2 terabytes live on Backblaze. 1 terabyte lives on the Moro data box. Yeah. Do I really need those? Like, I asked do I need podcasting files from 10 years ago? I don't know.
I'm still keeping all that stuff. I still keep in my NAS, right? Like, that's what I love about. I do have a bunch of local storage that's not on OneDrive.
Yeah.
And I do have it backed up, same thing as you, to Backblaze B2. But probably don't need that.
I pay $11.
I probably don't even need the first copy locally, and how I'm paying to back it up.
Yeah.
Backblaze B2.
Yeah.
No, the things we do, Jim.
Unless they decide to close for some reason.
Right.
Like, one night they're like, yep, we're done. Right. Whatever. So
the good news, I guess you bring up a good point, Jim. If we needed to, we know how to self-host stuff. Like if Microsoft was all of a sudden like, we're doubling our prices. Like, okay, that might not be worth it. Right? Bring it back over, fire back up the next cloud container. I didn't delete anything.
Yeah.
I just turned it off.
Good point.
So it's like,
point.
We have the ability to, if we
just
need to.
Moving that much data. That's the thing.
Yeah.
Like when now we're talking about moving terabytes of data, and you got to
talk about a data bandwidth cap.
Yeah. Yeah. And there was that service. What was it, man? There was a cloud-based service a long time ago. I'm trying to remember the name of it, where you could move it cloud to cloud and never even came local.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Somebody in the chat room. I wrote about this on a blog for a lot of years ago. I can't remember.
Smart.
Yeah, some of that stuff. So, well, anything else, Mike? Anything else you want to add in before we wrap it up?
No, I'll be interested. I want to get your guys' feedback on this. I don't know if, it sounds like you and I are not in the minority, Jim. Sounds like a lot of people kind of have these same general thoughts, frustrations with stuff and switching things around. I'm sure we'll get the opposite feedback. Last time when I said this, you all said, yeah, get rid of Nextcloud. Like, that sounds like, what's your wife going to do? And yeah, we agree, OneDrive. So now I'll probably get the Nextcloud fans who are like, whoa. Yeah. So it'll be fun, but give us the feedback. That's what I'm interested to hear, is what you guys are dealing with. Are you guys still self-hosting? Are you guys going cloud? So hit me up on Twitter at Wieger Tech. I'd love to get your tweets or emails or
or jump into the Discord group, theaverageguy.tv/Discord.
That's where you should go. Yes.
Yeah, that's probably the best way. That's probably the easiest way to go. But you could still at Wieger Tech, get you there. At Jay Collison on Twitter. I'm doing more on Twitter. I'm actually tweeting more work stuff lately. So if you see that, you're like, what is all this strength stuff that he's doing? Okay, that's my job. That's what I do for my job. I'm not going to start a set. They want me to do more Twitter, and I'm not starting a second Twitter account. So if you follow me on Twitter and you can't handle the strength stuff, sorry. But I do both tech and work. I do both work and play on Twitter. If you want to join me there, you can do that as well. TheAverageGuy.tv/Discord. Big thanks to Christian over at Maple Grove Partners. Get secure, reliable, high-speed hosting from people that you know and you trust. If you want to get great hosting, plans start as little as $10 a month. Check it out, maplegrovepartners.com. And let's see if there's anything else we need to do. We thank this. Well, I'll just thank him again. If you're a Patreon subscriber for Home Gadget Geeks, thanks for all that you do. You're great. You're a great group of supporters, and I appreciate you guys and what you do every single month. Thanks for doing that. I hope you feel that thanks. I think I'll probably be putting another meetup together here shortly to see what we can do. I know I say that and then I don't do it, so maybe I should just do it. And we'll get together and do it that way. We are live every Thursday, 8 p.m. Central, 9 Eastern, out here at theaverageguy.tv/live. Not showing any signs of going anywhere at this point. 497 is in the books. 498, 99, and then a big 500 coming up. And Mike, we haven't talked about it at all. So I think we're just going to do a regular show. I'll just be honest with you. Well, I'm sure we'll mention it. But we'll get some folks booked. I don't have anybody in the books at the moment. It's you and me for a while. We might take a week off in there. I think maybe we'll do 499 and take a week off. We deserve it, right? We've done.
Yeah, we got to look at the calendar. I'm in San Diego one of these Thursdays in August. I should.
Yeah, we should start looking at the calendar.
We should start looking at that. I know. I think it'll be end up after. I think it'll probably be 501.
Okay. Yeah. Well, maybe 500 and we take a break. Something like that. So thanks for coming out and joining us.
Never come back. We just ghost you all. Just like, there they go.
That's a good idea.
Where'd Jim and Mike go?
I don't know. They did 500 and then he's just
Mike wiped his whole server and then just left. Like he told us it's all gone.
Jim said he was going to burn it down and Mike took it seriously. He just burned all his gear. That's just the way it worked. All right. We'll see you guys next week. With that, we'll say goodbye, everybody.